Viewers, with their dreams being put on hold, Harvard's Indian students are caught in a limbo after America's oldest university has lost its visa rights. Harvard, in fact, has been revered by generations and is now reeling under political fire. And at the heart of this crisis are the dreams of hundreds of thousands of Indian students. That's right, viewers. The US Department of Homeland Security has stripped Harvard of its SEVP certification, essentially barring it from enrolling international students for the current academic year. But this is not just about Harvard. This is far bigger than that. There are 6 lakh Indian students who apply for F1 visas. All of them are not going to Harvard. There are 3.3 lakh of them which are currently studying in the US. The growing perception that is there in the US right now is under Trump administration that foreign students are not welcome. International students, they may be contributing to the American economy, but still the numbers don't seem to add up when it comes to the Trump administration. Their futures hang by a thread. For many, this journey starts with sleepless nights and tight budgets. 30,000 rupees for service fees, 15,800 for the DS-160. Endless interviews, stress and sacrifice. We're talking about one specific case, but there are many such. And remember, in the last 24 hours, there have been conflicting reports, but very disturbing ones that indicate that there could be a complete pause on all visas that may be granted to foreign students. And that, of course, is, as I said, conflicting reports, but extremely important because India does send a very large number of them. The rules have turned ruthless. In fact, in one particular case, if your visa is at risk, well, then you speak against America. Online deportation looms. The cost of free speech, well, everything. For perspective, let's take into account how much an international student actually pays to study at NYU. I'm just putting out one case study for our viewers to understand the scale at which international students, including those from India, contribute to the American economy. And look what they're getting in return. They're getting uncertainty, confusion, and a complete lack of idea as to whether their future is secured or not. On your screens are some of those numbers. The amount of money that they pay to study, how much of it is non-refundable, how much of it is in phases, and all of it, of course, I wouldn't say it's down the road because, as I said, some reports are conflicting, but it does add to confusion. It does add to the kind of uncertainty that's looming. And on that note, in fact, I want to quickly put forth some of the big questions that we are asking on this debate when it comes to about whether Ivy League is now all about shattered dreams, delayed visas, and visa disappointments. I'm going to put that out for our viewers. Is the Trump administration, that's the first key question, is the Trump administration actually killing the American dream? It looks like that because there are, as I said, serious concerns regarding it. Next up, will social timelines actually now be scanned before academic transcripts? There are some reports that indicate it may be so. If that is the case, then look at where all the resources are actually going. They're not going into finding the top talent. They are going towards actually mining social media handles. Can America be made great without skilled Indian professionals? Simple question. At the end of the day, look at the number of American CEOs powering, the Indian American CEOs that are powering the American economy. Is this the end of the Ivy League dominance? And lastly, what recourse do Indian students have if their visas are denied? They're admitted, accepted in terms of their admission formalities completed, visa formalities not. Where do they stand? What is their recourse? To answer that, let me quickly now get in Aditya Surti, who is an immigration attorney, joining us live from the US to talk more about how things are likely to unfold. Do we have Aditya join us? Okay, let's quickly get him. Okay. Aditya, good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking out the time to speak to NDTV. Let me start by asking you that while there is no official word on whether there is a pause on student visas by the American administration, there are reports indicating some of it, but it has added to another level of and a layer of complexity and uncertainty for students, isn't it? What should their recourse really be in times of such great anxiety and insecurity?
Okay, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure that I'm here on this platform. Well, let me make a couple of quick comments before I respond to that question. The first issue is that you have to understand the background of where the Trump administration's current policy as it relates to student visa revocation stemmed from. So the background of all this is laid in the 1952 law that basically says that the Secretary of State has broad discretionary powers to revoke student visas if they feel that the issuance of student visa is contrary to national policy interests. Now, what the current administration has done is that it has used this law to randomly and rampantly revoke student visas. There are two particular categories of student visas that we have observed which are being revoked. One is the pro-Palestinian advocacy group, students who are involved in protests across the country, which this administration deems is adverse to its national policy interests. So those students are at the risk of losing their visas or getting their visas revoked. And the second category of students are those students who are who have some kind of a minor criminal infraction on the record. And we are talking about infractions. We are not talking about like actual crimes. So even if a particular student may have an infraction as minuscule as a traffic violation, then that student is facing a problem. What we as legal practitioners have been actively doing is filing lawsuits across the country, seeking injunctions against the revocation of these visas. And the other alternative is to procure the student status by filing reinstatement applications. Now, reinstatement of student visa applications take a while, but courts across the country are favorably issuing restraints against the revocation of these visas. So
in fact, Aditya, one Indian American
seeking.
student did win recently. She won a legal reprieve against one such diktat that was passed against her for a traffic violation, in fact. But I want to come to the other aspect, reports that are coming in, very disturbing set of reports indicating that a possibly very extreme situation where social media profiles of students could actually be mined before deciding whether or not visa should be granted to them, even though they qualify on all academic credentials. That's disturbing.
That is true. So they have started implementing all kinds of policies, including but not limited to having access to their social media accounts at the port of entry. When students arrive in the US after procuring the visa, they are looking into their WhatsApp profiles, their email profile, the email histories, so on and so forth. The real problem here is that students who may have a pre-intended plan of action to settle in the US. So you have to understand that a student visa is not a dual intent visa. It is a single intent visa, which means that your intention of procuring the visa is to come to the US, finish your studies, and go back to your home country. If there is any conversation that they see or any material that they see on social media posts or WhatsApp messages, which leads them to believe that the intention of the student is to permanently settle down in the US, then that's a red flag. So students have to be extremely careful about not having participated in a course of communication that leads a third party to believe that their overall intent is to settle in the US. I'll give you an example. We had a situation recently in which a student, after procuring the student visa, comes to the port of entry here in the US, flies to the US, and then when accessed, there are conversations between her and her boyfriend, who is a US citizen, that look, once you land in the US, we are going to change your status from a student status to a green card applicant, and move on. So that resulted in her getting deported from the airport because her intention was not to just use the student visa to study here, but her intention was to use it to permanently settle down in the US. So those are the kind of conversations that can put you in trouble. Also, students have to understand that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Aditya, yeah, that's a red flag that you raised. But in terms of advice to students who are stuck in a situation, whether like Harvard, in a situation where they don't know, do they have enough time to go to another program? 15 days is actually a very short period of time, especially at a time when all programs have actually closed in on admissions, or students who are actually stuck in a situation where they've been accepted for a program but visas have been rejected. what advice would you like to give to them, specific advice, word of caution that could actually help them sail through these very uncertain times?
Okay, so there are two pieces of information which I would like to share. One is that Harvard did win the lawsuit, right? As yesterday, a motion was granted by the district court in Massachusetts, which allowed Harvard um, to continue granting SEVIS approvals to its students. So Harvard did win this lawsuit. Secondly, students have to be cognizant of the fact that if they are coming to the US under the current administration to pursue an education, they are taking certain risks. And the biggest risk that they are taking is being at the mercy of the university's support. See, Harvard won the lawsuit because Harvard in itself initiated. It's an educational body that is so strong and that is so well grounded within the American educational system that it initiated this lawsuit. If you enroll in a university that does not have that support, then you should not waste your funds after getting enrolled in that university. You would rather go to a university that's going to back you up. I'm sure Harvard did not charge thousands of dollars from these students to participate in this litigation. It did it on its own initiative. Harvard hired its own lawyers to file this lawsuit, and it won on behalf of its students. That's the strength
That's a
of the
very
university
important point
that
you're
we're looking
making,
at.
but also limiting, because while Ivy League is an aspiration, a lot of Indian students aspire to be at the Ivy League campuses, at the Ivy League colleges, but several of them don't make it there, right? Which is when they look at probably rung below or two rungs below, because they still want to pursue their international education dreams in America. And what you're saying is that if an university is not powerful enough to take on the administration, do not try your luck there. That's essentially what you are saying, which brings me to ask you, yeah, go ahead, finish your point, sir.
Yeah, that is one aspect of what I'm saying. The other aspect that I want to also share is that I agree with you that not everyone can get into an Ivy League. I get it. But students can get into a second tier or third tier university. The message I'm trying to convey is that avoid sham colleges. Some of the students do get into trouble because the colleges are quote unquote accredited, but they are not to the mark of where they should be. And they are primarily in the business of making money by harboring international students. So students should try to avoid those kind of universities. That's what I'm trying to convey.
All right, very quickly, sir, before I wrap this up, which is that how much of some of the reports that are coming in about a pause in issuance of visas or the fact that social media profiles will be mined, how much of this do you think will actually stand in a court of law in the US, since everything that the Trump administration is taking in terms of decisions is being challenged legally?
I think at the end of the day, the Constitution of the United States is the most powerful authority, and it will stand the test of time because the principles that are grounded in the Constitution, such as due process and First Amendment, will at any given time prevail. We have seen this historically, whether it is, during the Second World War, even during the Vietnam War. I mean, again, you have to look at the situation in the context of the times that we are in. And I firmly believe that the Constitution of this country is so powerful that it will help individuals like these students who are stuck in this mess
Okay.
to prevail through proper legal channels.
All right, Aditya, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me and really explaining in detail, advising and cautioning several of those students who are caught in the crossfire of Trump's crackdown.